got tears in my eyes.
The cream of the crop. Acknowledge me.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's Sunday. Survivor Series in the books. Episode 319 of Top Rope Nation. Ryan Drosty, Jesse Velasquez, Justin Joint here to talk all the latest on CM Punk's return to the WWE. At the conclusion of the show, very well orchestrated by WWE. We're going to talk about all of it. There's some breaking news this morning on Punk and what has all gone into his return, what is coming up for his return. We're going to get into all of it. We want to hear from you. Hit us in the chat. Let us know your thoughts on what you saw last night. If you want to get featured in the show, for sure, hit us with those super chats. We'll get to all of those momentarily. Jesse Velasquez, let me just hit you first. What's your initial response to the return of CM Punk to WWE?
I was going to open with, there wasn't much to talk about. We should give our listeners out there, Ryan, a preview of tomorrow night's football game between the Vikings and the Bears.
Yeah, should we make a friendly wager on that one, Jesse?
It was delicious. The anarchist in me that exists. I am a full devout Christian, but I do love a little anarchy in my system. Truly enjoyed it. I smiled and instantly prayed afterwards. No, I'm just kidding there, folks. I absolutely, obviously love the ending, but we'll get to the thoughts here momentarily, I suppose.
Justin Joint, he poured a cold one here right before we went on the air. How are you feeling this morning?
Pretty shitty. Just watched Tottenham shit the bed against Aston Villa, a game they should have easily won, had plenty of opportunities. Crap. So pro wrestling. I have been very negative on WWE for quite a while now. Even with their uptick in this past year, I still mostly do not care. And they have gone ahead and pulled the trigger on basically the one thing that will get me to tune in at least somewhat regularly going forward.
Kind of how I feel. My initial response was, oh, fuck, I have to watch Monday Night Raw now. Damn it. Can't miss television. And by the way, Punk is scheduled for Raw this week. That is some new information. They're rewriting the show currently because the writers had no idea Punk was returning. This was kept secret from nearly everybody. It was a Triple H Nick Khan thing. And although they there had been feelers out there between the two sides for quite some time. I mentioned this on the show multiple times. We've been seeing the hints about it. We've been seeing the lines inserted from wrestlers, from commentary. We saw it last night on the pre-show. They said best in the world within like the first 2 minutes of the show. I was adamant on this podcast that all of that was very intentional, despite reporting to the contrary elsewhere. This was all very intentional. Now, of course, the deal did not come together officially, reportedly until the day of the show. Yesterday, Punk and Triple H apparently had a 1-hour phone call about a week ago and hashed everything out to kind of get to the point where they could really do this. And like I tweeted out last night, you got to hand it to WWE. The fact that they could keep this secret in this day and age, in a big market, in the guy's hometown like this, is unbelievable. Apparently, they were discussing holding off his return for the Rumble in Florida, but it came down to, can we keep it a secret that long? And they didn't think that they could, that it would eventually leak. And so they needed to pull the trigger now, where he could literally just drive from his house to the arena. I mean, he showed up just minutes before he walked out last night, like 4 minutes before Survivor Series went off the air. They cleared out a section of the backstage area, and Punk just walked past everybody. Hunter took over directing the show, producing the show, called for his theme song. People running the music didn't even know he was going to be on there, and they went right to it, and he walked out. Now, the talent in the ring, or at least some of them, did know Punk was going to be there. But they were told right before they went out to the ring, so word could not leak. And, we saw some responses here in the aftermath, video leaking out on YouTube and Twitter and everywhere about, the Seth Rollins thing. Seth Rollins totally losing his shit. Now, Drew McIntyre stormed off before Punk came out. we're going to talk about what was going on there. But I mean, shock level, I was live on Bleacher Report when this happened, and it was me and Jeremy Loss. I'll say my response was like a little more measured. He totally lost his shit. I didn't think it was not totally unexpected. I thought it could happen. I was surprised though when the copyright thing came up in the corner, and I thought the show was over, and I started going into talking about what we thought the show as a whole was, A through F. We'll get to that in a minute. And then all of a sudden I glanced over and I saw his Titantron. I was like, what the hell? Are you watching this? So the way they put it together was perfect. We did not see on the official broadcast any response from the guys in the ring. They never showed them up close. Everything that we've seen is, came out in social afterwards. I mean, production value, Jesse, what did you think of the way they did this?
Other than the actual shot of him coming out and then them cutting away, which I did not like at all. They should have put the full focus on him. I really liked the production of the whole thing. Crowd went bananas. I recall hearing you on the BR app there saying that you've been in that building. I have as well in 2019 when Kevin Owens made his NXT War Games. He was the last entrant for the team, and that was the loudest pop I'd heard of that year. That building shook, and I mean, I can only imagine how much it shook last night. It came off very, very well on TV, so I was pleasantly not surprised, but I was very happy with how everything turned out.
I cannot imagine how loud it was. They're just, having been in the building, and it was clearly the biggest response of the night. Randy got a good reaction when he came out, but I mean, it was like the sound was distorted on the broadcast. Justin, what was your reaction live to it? Were you running around your basement?
No, I mean, I was definitely shocked, but like you, I didn't think it was impossible that he could show up, even though it makes him look like the biggest hypocrite in professional wrestling history. But I thought they did it really well with putting the trademark up and, thinking that they're just going to go to black. So kudos to them, on the secrecy and, and delivering on that. And poor Randy Orton kind of burying the lead right there, huh?
In a WWE way, this is very similar to Danielson and Cole from AEW's All Out, when you get Orton in the Cole role and Punk in the Danielson role.
Yeah.
So I guess my big question coming out of this is, do we still think CM Punk is the devil or no?
I guess not.
No,
right? We had the discussion on the show and we said, no, he's not the devil, but man, it would be awesome if he was. It would sure be awesome if he was. Yeah, there's so many directions we could take this discussion. The hypocritical thing, absolutely. I mean, I've seen a lot of the clips out there on social media about what he said to MJF, about headlining night 4 of the buy one, get one free deal and how that hasn't aged particularly well. In the end, wrestling's all about making money. There's a lot of money to be made. Everybody comes back. That's why I wasn't that shocked. Look, we talk about this on the show all the time. We're Bret Hart marks, for God's sakes. Bret Hart came back. If Bret Hart came back, surely CM Punk could come back. So I couldn't totally lose my shit watching it. And then also just hearing the murmurings of what was happening backstage. But still, it was surprising. I thought they did it in the most surprising way possible. Because when he first came out, I was kind of wondering, what's his angle here? He wasn't involved in the match. Is he coming after somebody? Is there going to be a face-to-face? And then that never happened. I thought it was good that they cut with him on the ramp, because now you have incentive to tune into Raw to see what he's going to say, see why he's there. Now, the reaction of Seth Rollins, and you've all probably seen this going around on social media. He flipped him off. He had to be held back. Like Michael Cole and Corey Graves were out there holding him back.
Cole held him back. Wow, that's impressive.
and they all look stunned. Sammy didn't look happy. Not that surprising given his connections in the business. But I think a lot of this is just working. It's hard to know in wrestling, but it would seem clear that Rollins is his first big feud. Rollins has made comments. Rollins may not actually like him, no doubt about it. There's been beef there, but he recognizes a money-making opportunity.
He worked, I think it's Riddle.
Yeah.
You worked with Riddle, and what Riddle did or said about Seth Rollins and Becky was 1,000 times worse than whatever seemingly happened between him and Punk. So anybody who thought that the Seth Rollins things was a shoot, I'm sure there was some shoot feelings involved.
Yeah.
But that he was working. He was acting, everybody.
Speaking of Riddle, he's butthurt right now, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. Did you see his tweet? Yeah. What do you call him? 0-2 Punk or something like that? He just got canned. There was a lot of this reaction. So like Rhea Ripley on the outside kind of waving it off like, who cares? These people were all working. Do you see Randy Orton pulled up a chair and sat down to watch?
Yeah. Waved at him.
It was funny. But yeah, McIntyre stomped off before the return and he looked pissed throughout the match. I was told everything with McIntyre was a work. Even him, he left the building right away. He went backstage. He left the building right away. This is all working. He didn't storm off under his own accord.
Okay.
So, I mean, we know that there's been the negotiations with him and his contract. I'm sure, it was reported by Fightful that when they were told, some of the wrestlers were not happy about it, that he was returning. And I'm sure, like with McIntyre, who's trying to get a good deal, I'm sure they threw a lot of money at Punk. He doesn't have the leverage he really used to have. This is really his only choice to make big money, but he does have leverage. And if you bring me back, we're going to make a lot of money together. You got to cut me in on that. So this is the first big signing since the TKO thing. And we all know that there's been talk about they're going to go cheap on these wrestler contracts now, looking at what UFC does. It'll be interesting to see how much money he got if that ever gets out there. It is being reported that it's a multi-year contract. We don't know the exact number of years, but I know 3-year contracts are pretty routine in WWE. So we'll see. But I got to assume he's on a very short leash. He's not going to have creative control at all. He's going to have to do right by the company. He's going to have to be a good soldier. And if he's not, they're going to cut him loose. This is his last chance to prove that he can be a good boy and he can go out there and he can do what's required of him to write off his career in the best way possible. This is his last chance. Impact made him an offer. Do you want Punk to go out in TNA? This is it. This is it. So he's got to come through.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious with his temperament that he needs this kind of structure and to not be able to throw his weight around like he did in AEW, which turned out very bad. And to anybody out there who's thinking, this is going to hurt WWE or anything, or this will end badly, maybe it will. But Punk behaved for years in WWE and it just ended badly. There was a bad break, very bad break. So to think that he can't play nice inside of WWE, I think would be an error in judgment.
Mm-hmm.
I've been waiting to make this analogy for a couple of hours. So deep breath. CM Punk is very similar to an NFL wide receiver, like a Stephon Diggs, a Randy Moss, where if you're feeding him the ball, he is extremely happy. If you're not, he's going to let you know about it and demand to either be traded for something to be done. I watched Randy Moss get traded to the Oakland Raiders. I watched him just be a bust there, get dealt to New England and set records, make it to the Super Bowl, and then he fell out of favor there and got traded back here, only to get traded again 5 weeks later into the season. CM Punk is going to play nice for a little while. As soon as something doesn't go his way, he's going to make a stink about it. Something is going to happen, and he will be gone. This is a multiple-year deal. He is not going to last the whole thing. And lastly, I will say this is going to be a very fun joyride for pro wrestling fans. Enjoy it because this is probably it for CM Punk.
It's going to be really interesting how this plays out because both sides are watching this, where if it works out badly, AEW is going to say, see, that's what happened here. We couldn't prevent it. If it doesn't work out badly, WWE people can say, this is why you need more structure over there at AEW. You should have been able to make money with this guy. And I mean, one of my initial reactions to this is that once again, for AEW, it's too bad. I mean, this was the game changer and they couldn't get these guys to sit down and hash out their differences. And that has already aged poorly, and it could age even worse because everything that happened when he came back and the fight it all in and everything was because they never squashed the beef. There was nobody who could get those guys in the same room. The Bucks could just refuse to talk to the guy, talk to my lawyers, and the heat continued until it blew up again. It was predictable. And that just, to Justin's point, that will not happen at WWE because of how the company is set up. There is so much more structure in this company. People can't throw their weight around in the same way that they can at AEW. And if you're AEW, man, I mean, they got good stuff going on. I really enjoy AEW's television right now. I'm definitely going to keep tuning in. I was a huge AEW fan before Punk ever arrived. He wasn't a founding member of that company or anything, but he was the guy who they brought in that gave them more momentum than they have had since. And so, like, how do they respond to this? It all has to be with the product, because there's no names really that they can get at this point that's going to shake things up. Is there? I mean, they got some big names there still, but there's no, like, if Drew McIntyre jumps, that's not going to really matter. It's not going to make a huge dent, you know. Copeland jumped, that didn't make a huge dent. And to that, for them to get back to the momentum they had in 21, it just has to come from like reviews of the television that they're doing cutting edge stuff, because I just can't imagine, unless down the line they can get Cody to return, I don't know who can jump that will, you know, give them that spark again.
You're kind of hitting on kind of my bigger picture feelings, because I am kind of conflicted with Punk showing up. Now, pro wrestling is better with Punk in it. I already said that, you know, Punk being in WWE will make me watch that product. But, you know, there's been a sea change happening in professional wrestling in this past year. And it feels like this moment is kind of that tsunami hitting the shore. WWE has gradually been getting better for this past year, while AEW, I think, at least in these past few months, have kind of suffered a little bit. It feels like they're kind of turning into the aspects of WWE that at least I did not care for. Like, there's a lot of hokey, bad humor. The booking is kind of all over the place. And, you know, to that point, Eddie Kingston was getting what chance last night on Collision?
Oh, God.
So it feels weird to me, because AEW is supposed to be the alternative. It was supposed to be the place for both fans and wrestlers who rejected WWE or were rejected by WWE. And the two big stalwarts of that were Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. You know, it started with the pipe bomb, and it was with Cody being unsatisfied with his place in WWE and going and making a better position for himself in pro wrestling, helping start AEW. You know, to Ryan's point, you know, bringing Punk in was an all-time professional wrestling moment for AEW. And now both those guys are back with WWE. And it's not this bad, but there is part of me that just feels like we're on a funeral march with AEW right now. So I'm kind of worried in that regards. I don't think AEW is going to fail. There's too much money in the TV product and whatnot, but I don't like the direction it's heading. And oh man, the fact that I'm going to maybe start watching WWE more than AEW right now, it's just, I don't know, man. I'm frazzled.
Ryan hit it. They're gonna have to go back to their roots, and they have made answers. They just signed the best professional wrestler in the world, Will Ospreay. I know he's not this magnetic name to a mainstream fan base, so they're going to have to go back to the grassroots storytelling that they were doing before they brought CM Punk in. That is the thing. And then in the press scrum last night with Cody Rhodes talking about can CM Punk, what were his thoughts? And that's where you just said, you know, if he can add on to us and continue to build on what we're doing, I'm all for it. And he mentioned politics amongst other things. It's like stereotypical Cody Rhodes press promo or whatnot, but there were definitely some valid points there. I think it's now, you're right, it's just a matter of slowly eroding the stink of the sports entertainment piece and going back to the grassroots, because we got the Continental Classic going on. Continue to build that momentum. I think as soon as a shift in your world title happens, when you can get away from that sports entertainment angle with MJF and maybe get him back to like what he was doing with Punk, with the likes of even Chris Jericho and that feud, you go backwards to Cody Rhodes. You just have to do that. I think what's the most exciting thing about this is AEW talent and WWE roster talent can both look and see what's going on the other side and go, hey, once my 2 to 3 years is up, I'll go over there for a change of scenery. The business is so healthy now. Everything's going to be just fine. So I think for pro wrestling as a whole, this is fantastic. And Punk, like I said, he's going to eventually tear it down. I truly believe this. There is going to be a nice little boon in business. They don't need him. Let's be real. But I think in the grand scheme of things, eventually the roller coaster is going to go up, much like it did with AEW, and it's eventually going to slowly come back down. So short term, fantastic. Long term, we shall see.
Yeah. AEW's not, I don't think they're going to fall off, because they're going to stay at least right where they're at. I mean, he's been gone for 3 months, so it's not like people are going to tune out because of this, but people might add, like us, WWE to their rotation more. But yeah, they're going to have to go full steam with Will Ospreay. He's not a household name. So he's one of those guys who's awesome, and new viewers are going to have to see him. You definitely need to get Max back to the old Max. You know, I said on the podcast recently, I wasn't really a fan of this babyface stuff recently. And it's because it takes away what about him is so cutting edge and risque almost on TV, how he pushes the envelope, and with the kangaroo kick and all this other nonsense. It's just not, it, like to Justin's point, it's sports entertainment.
Yep.
I want the old MJF back. You could still get the old MJF with him being a babyface, but yeah, he's far away right now to what originally got him over, I think. So they have guys there to counter this, but Jesse, grassroots, they're going to have to build up from what they already have, because they're not going to have the big jump to give them momentum. That was Punk. That was Danielson initially. They've already done that. They got a little out of Punk, but they struck out eventually because they weren't able to make the money that they should have because of stuff happening backstage and a lack of structure to settle all of that.
Yeah, I think this would be a good point in the podcast for those listening in the future anyways. Ryan, if you could insert that audio I sent you. This was kind of the first thing that popped in my head when I saw Punk show up in WWE.
The Star Wars clip.
Yep.
You were supposed to be the chosen one. Yes. Yep. So, God, there's so much I want to talk about this, but I want the whole show to be Punk. Okay, go ahead.
I'll add one more thing. I think your answer is under their umbrella right now. I think the person who can make this mainstream again and super cool is Swerve Strickland. I truly believe he can bring in a different demographic. He's very, very relatable to a younger audience, and not necessarily to boom it up to an Attitude Era type level, but I think bringing in the hip hop culture amongst it's something that we really haven't seen put at the forefront. Kind of the Nation of Domination to an extent, but they were to a lesser degree. I think Swerve can do it. Strap the rocket to that man.
I mean, I don't want to make this too much about AEW, but I mean, their blueprint has to be late 90s WWF, because when WWF took off, none of those people were household names. People knew Steve Austin, but he was a mid-carder in WCW. Everyone that AEW has that needs to make a difference, for the most part, are people on the rise that the mainstream audience is not familiar with. WWE's boom right now is mostly built off of people who have been around for a decade or more. Roman's been around forever now. I mean, historically speaking, if you look back at the 80s and 90s, Roman's been in over a decade now in WWF television. I mean, we're nearing Bret Hart 97, had been around for over a decade in the WWF. They brought in Punk, who was a star 10 years ago. This is almost like when WWF legends jumped to WCW. So the people featured on WWE are old stars. They're doing great business right now, but it's mostly people who've been around a long time. AEW is the new names. Are they going to be able to succeed? We'll see. Now on the WWE side, who do you want to see Punk work with first? What do you want to see his trajectory look like over the next few months? We have no idea how much he's going to be working on television. We don't know. I would be shocked if he works house shows. He might do a couple here and there. I would imagine, though, this is a pretty friendly contract for him to keep him healthy. As Huffman noted in the chat here, his health will come into question at some point in time. Who do you want to see him work with and when, Justin?
I mean, the first name that pops up for me is the name that would pop up for anybody showing up in WWE. You know, my favorite wrestler in the Fed is Gunther.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a whole lot of other big marquee I think CM Punk Cody would be very interesting down the road. But as of right now, the obvious pick is Seth with the way he responded at Survivor Series. That's something you can work into Royal Rumble and maybe go into WrestleMania with. I mean, those are the kind of the first names that pop into mind. Is there any chance that Punk steals Cody's spot, or what we assume to be Cody's spot at WrestleMania to work with Reigns?
I don't think so.
Agree. Just had to throw it out there.
Yeah.
That was a good question.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just because it's not like Cody's super young either, but Punk's older than Cody by several years, and it would not make sense to do. Eventually, yes, they have to do that match for sure, Roman and Punk. It would make headlines, but Cody's still one of the two most over people in this company. So, like, to move away from him would be totally nuts. I really want to see him do the Austin thing at Mania. It's one of the few dream matches left. We saw Steve Austin work with Kevin Owens, and they had a good match. You know, I mean, it was fine. And so clearly they can do the match. That's got to be one of those things that would draw Punk back to WWE outside of the money, is the chance to work with one of his heroes in the main event of WrestleMania. That would certainly main event one of the nights. I want to see him do the Seth Rollins match sooner. Initially, everyone was saying Seth at Mania. I mean, we're talking that is 4 months away? 4+ months away?
Yeah, 5 months.
I don't want to see that dragged out that long. I'd like to see him do that at the Rumble. They don't have a major pay-per-view in December, so they do that at the Rumble. And then you go into eventually doing the dream match with Steve. Why not? And then maybe you can do something with Roman or Cody in the summertime. But yeah, I'd like to see Seth happen pretty quickly and not at WrestleMania, I think. What do you think, Jesse?
I would like to see Gunther chop the life out of him.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think other than the marquee ones you named, I think stylistically, I would love Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. The Punk Owens microphone battles would be absolutely epic.
You know, that's part of the reason why I don't really want to see. Sorry to interrupt you, Jesse. Part of the reason I don't want to see Punk and Austin is because that was such a great moment for Owens on so many levels. Because, you know, during that time frame, all the stuff was coming out about Punk making fun of Owens for wearing a shirt back on the Indies and all that. And then, you know, Owens got to throw it in his face that he got to work with the one guy that Punk wanted to work with, you know, at the very tippy top of WrestleMania. You know, Owens being the company man, you know, that's a real feather in his cap. And also, I think to do Punk in Austin, you would just have to do the exact same thing you did with Owens, because we're never going to get Stone Cold in the black trunks again. It's going to have to be, you know, jean shorts, shirt wearing, just a brawl. So that really doesn't do much for me, just because I think it would be the exact same match.
Yeah, they just have to have a marquee match for WrestleMania for him right away. And I guess you could run back him and Rollins. You know, that Rollins is the one who doesn't seem to have the guaranteed dancing partner there unless they do a match with Gunther for the world title. But I mean, Cody and Roman, they've got to be married together at WrestleMania. And so that leaves Punk with either Seth or something down the card. And if you want to get him in the main event, it's either Seth for the world title or the dream match with Austin, I feel like. But there's a lot of, spicy matches out there eventually to get to. And the Sammy KO stuff is really interesting given their friendship with the Bucks. You know, Sammy being a big West Coast PWG guy, and that'll have some layers to it for people who know about, you know, the friendships and the histories of these characters. Yeah, I'd like to see both of those matches. Sammy was selling he wasn't very happy. You know, if you've seen the clips out there that people filmed last night too.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of nostalgia stuff because there really aren't many young guys I would want. Like Punk and Chad Gable wouldn't do much for me. Punk and let's say like a Braun Breaker, if he comes up, that does nothing for me. Carmelo Hayes, no. I mean, again, I think, again, short term, great. Long term, they're still in just a smidge of trouble. So, and one more point. John Alba tried to say last night on Twitter that he sees a very prosperous future for the WWE's main event picture. And here I am saying, well, Roman eliminated everything. The only future world champion you have on that roster is Gunther, that I care about, and that I'd say most educated pro wrestling fans care about. That's it, because everybody else, Roman's gone through. Cody could do it at WrestleMania 40 and moving forward, but ultimately, Gunther's the guy. That's it.
Boy, it would never happen, but that's my dream scenario for WrestleMania 40. If they could somehow turn Gunther into a true baby face and you have the clash of these two gigantic long reigns with the world champion versus the IC champion, you know, it's Warrior Hogan, but except it's guys that can fucking work, you know. That's my dream scenario, would be Gunther going over Roman Reigns, but that will never happen in a million years.
Correct. And on a lesser scale, just because this is the mark in me, I'd love to see a Punk versus Ricochet one-off, but outside of that, nothing else.
Yeah. You mentioned the media scrum. I'll say it's worth watching. It's not as long as the AEW ones. You know, they kept it pretty tight. But there was actually some very good questions asked, I thought. You know, a lot of times people make fun of the questions at those scrums, but there was some good questions asked. Hunter handled himself pretty well, you know, talking about how it all came together and everything. And, you know, he acknowledged the past, obviously, and the bad blood and everything, but you know, he basically said that it comes down to if his audience wants it, why not do it? You know, so here we are. So should we get into the show itself?
Do we have to? Can we just keep talking about Punk?
Maybe we'll talk a little more about Punk at the very end. Keep people tuned in with that. I want to get your grades on this show. All right, this will be very interesting. I'm going to try to share our Twitter poll here and show you all how the people responded on Twitter. So we had a big response to this one, unsurprisingly. 157 votes. 60.5% gave it an A, 30.6 a B.
Jesus Christ, talk about grading on a curve. What the fuck were those people watching the entire show?
I think people are grading based on 3 minutes at the end here. Yeah, because...
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, sex just isn't about the climax, everybody.
It's an A show. There's no way this is an A show.
It was in this case, Justin.
Well, yeah, touche.
This is people grading in the moment because they saw something unexpected, which granted was awesome. I cannot imagine giving this show an A. I said on the Bleacher Report stream last night, I was at a C. I just called it very average. And then when Punk came out, I said I could maybe be talked into just going up to a B- because it had an all-time moment on it. But when it comes to the matches itself, I thought it was a pretty underwhelming show. As it's not going to take us long, you guys, to talk about these 5 matches. There's a key point I want to make on the War Games matches that I'll get to here in a second. But I mean, yeah, overall, I could not agree with this. I'll go B- just because of the Punk stuff. But I mean, yeah, it was a C show before that to me. I could never give this an A. What do you think, Jesse?
I'm with you, B-, and it's only because of the ending.
Yeah.
That's the only reason, because everything else there was C. There wasn't nothing egregiously awful. There was one thing that was extremely overrated, which I know we're going to hit on here soon. But yeah, I mean, but there wasn't anything spectacular either. Punk's the only moment you're going to go see. And then there's only one other rewatchable moment for me, which we'll talk about later.
Justin.
C, I guess. I mean, I would have probably given it a D without maybe a D+ without the Punk surprise. I thought it was an incredibly boring show.
Yeah, these War Games matches are for longtime fans. There's just no way we can get into them. We just can't. It shows a generational divide, or not even
It's
a
not War
generational
Games.
divide. It's not War Games. Yeah, I say that every year. You can't call it War Games without the the roof on the cage. But the bigger point, too, with the way it's laid out, shows that the business now is all about social media clips. They literally lay out the matches on how can we clip this and put it out on social media in short clips. You know, how can we make a short YouTube video of this? How can we get this onto Twitter X and Instagram and Reels and everything? Because it's not chaotic at all. It's very contrived. You know, like the spot where everyone did the hanging DDT in the men's match with Orton at the end.
God.
None of it feels natural. Doesn't feel like a real fight. You go back, you watch the old War Games matches. It's chaos. The cameras cannot keep up with everything. That's how it should feel. And so, if you've watched the old stuff and then you tune into this, like my kids get into it, so I guess that's where the generational divide is. But it's just like, this isn't War Games. It's social media clip. That's literally how they lay out the matches now, with that in mind. And it comes across, I think, more so than in any other matches in these War Games matches, with the high spots and the way they set it up, and everyone just standing around, laying around, waiting for someone to do their move that they can clip and then go to somebody else. And so for that reason, I mean, they work hard. They open with the women's match, and I don't know. It's close. I would maybe say the women's match was maybe a little bit better than the men's. It's pretty close though, but neither was particularly good. I mean, for me, they were about a 3-star match. I'm sure the big wigs are going to give them over 4. I just can't go that on these. I mean, we saw spots that we've seen before for the most part, especially in the women's match, Jesse. Right?
Was brutal. I would go 2.5 stars on that for sure. I mean, if we're all about star ratings, it was because everything was just so, the tropes, a lot of sloppy botches too. Not necessarily botches, but the one thing that really stood out to me was you could audibly hear Bayley calling spots 3 or 4 times in the middle of the ring while this was going on.
Yes.
You can't be doing that. You're professionals. This is a match that should have been in an eliminator style. I think it would have been much better if it was an eliminator style. But again, if we can do without a War Games or a Blood and Guts for like 2-3 years, I'm game. Sign me up for that, because what I saw last night was just rehashed stuff and people were going crazy for it. I'm like, I've seen this movie quite a few times. And with the men's match, there was a little more physicality, a little more believability. So that's why I got into that much more than I did the women's match. Not saying it was spectacular, but it was definitely, for me, a better overall presentation.
Yeah, for the men's match, I liked the tease with Drew and Damian Priest. I thought that was good stuff to start it with. Mm-hmm. Drew McIntyre during the entire thing, I thought was excellent. I mean, just anytime you see him, whatever he's doing, you kind of believe it, or you at least believe that he believes it. And as far as the double ring cage matches, I would give them 5 stars, if only because they were about 10 to 15 minutes shorter than any of the previous incarnations.
That's true. They kept them a little tighter. Yeah, the Io Sky spot with the trash can, which we've seen before. I mean, it's just repeating spots we've seen before. The crowd went crazy for it. But the women's match was all basically, they had a War Games match to see if Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair could get along. You know, I mean, yeah, they had the stuff with the history with Damage Control and everything, but Shotzi out there just was totally out of place. I mean, she did that promo on SmackDown, which was cringeworthy. I mean, that match would have been better as just like a 3-on-3 elimination match.
Yes.
Survivor Series rules versus a War Games match. They didn't need Shotzi in there. Just make it 3-on-3.
Talking Charlotte and Becky, shout out Stuart in our Facebook chat, where he said they were trying to compare it to Sting and Nikita at a previous War Games.
Yeah.
Not quite to that level, but...
Jesse, you made the point, I think, last night in our text maybe, where you said, you know, once again, Damage Control jobbers to the stars.
Oh my gosh. They had done a decent job of making them look okay the last couple of months, and hey, maybe they're back on the train again. And Triple H is like, nope, we're derailing that right away. Unreal how you can just squash the heels momentum. And I'm going to give you one more thing. How in the world do you give an advantage via a fan vote for a War Games? A fan vote. Get out of my face with that crazy stuff.
It's so weird structurally to have the babyface team with the advantage in War Games. So like, yeah, constantly in the women's match, the baby faces had the numbers, and then you got the heels fighting from behind and outnumbered all the time. And then I guess the wrinkle they threw in was that it seemed like every time Damage Control got a member to come out, Bayley was getting her ass kicked, and they just took their time getting there. They got down to the door. They were like slowly searching around for a weapon. And, you know, the tease is that Bayley's going to get kicked out of the group. So they didn't run down to make the save. Logically, it might not make sense, but that's where they were going with that, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I think in the moment, as we'll get to in the men's, there was stuff in the men's that I really picked apart on the live stream last night. So I was a little higher in the women's, but you guys have convinced me with some of the spots. I'll call the men's match a little better now. But yeah, neither was particularly good, I did not think. So yeah, we get the awkward hug with Becky and Charlotte, and you know, it was whatever. In the end, the baby faces go over.
A couple of cool spots in there. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah.
Who's bleeding all over the mat? Was that Shotzi?
Shotzi. Hardway, I believe. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah.
I'm sure they patched her
She
up
didn't sneak a blade in there. Yeah.
Is she the worst entrant in War Games history?
I mean, probably. Yeah, she's up there. So, Jesse, after that, they went into the Miz and Gunther. And were you just stunned that the Miz did not win the Intercontinental title, Jesse? How did the Miz not dethrone Gunther? I was stunned. We were talking about this for days. And then I get on Twitter and there's people advocating for this. Are you people crazy? You want the Miz to beat Gunther? In what universe does that make sense? Thank God it didn't happen. It was one of the Miz's better matches in quite some time. You know, they had the teases with, you know, the turnbuckle pad comes off, and then the Miz is able, like a good baby face, you know, to hit that low blow. And by the way, I mean, him being the baby face in this match, he comes out, got like no response from the hottest wrestling audience in the country, Chicago, the loudest building you can wrestle in. And he came out and it was like no response at all. But they did get him believing a little bit when they did the turnbuckle spot. You know, he eventually hit the skull crushing finale and all of that, and had the close falls. But yeah, in the end, Gunther wins because it was the only thing that made sense, Jesse.
So that match barely fed my kid an app at Culver's. Yes. So I was audibly laughing when Miz was getting that offense in and the crowd was buying it. If you could have had a live cam on me watching this match, you would have been wondering, like, what is he watching? Why is this so funny to him? Because the gullible nature of some WWE fans to me is hilarious. When you look at this from a kayfabe perspective, and now Miz's record is a spotty 6-35 over the last 2 years on TV with the Elites.
But he should beat Gunther, like one of the top guys they've built up. Yes, would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'll go a little further here. So quick question for you guys. How many singles matches has The Miz had over 4 stars in his career? Just give me a number.
0. Well, not counting like multi-man matches.
Correct. Singles matches only.
I would say 0.
Ryan.
Well, no, maybe 1. Dolph. Sorry.
I'll go 2.
He's actually had 5.
Wow.
But in reality, in the world that we actually live in, he has had 0. But continue.
He's had 1 after 2018. Logan Paul at SummerSlam. That is it.
Ah, yeah.
So the title versus career at No Mercy 2016 was his highlight. That was a very good match.
Mm-hmm.
Very good match. But I do like Mike Mizanin as a human being. I've watched him a lot growing up. Real World New York, the whole 9 yards. But for you to get me to believe that he was a credible contender, and anyone in that audience out there, I have a lakefront property in Cottage Grove that I'd like to sell you.
Well,
Could we baptize them in the Lake Minnetonka like Prince? The water.
I think I need to be purified after watching that match.
Purified, yes.
They had me biting a little bit, if only because we have had years of experience watching them make atrocious booking decisions. And this would have felt like vintage Vince McMahon booking to have the Miz go over Gunther here. So they had me bite a little bit. It also helped that I was watching with my son at this moment, who me and him are both big goofer fans, as my son likes to say. So we were very invested in. I was just waiting for some bad booking, which didn't happen because they are in a much better place.
I mean, he certainly would have been goofer if he had lost to the Miz. That's for sure. But yeah, they went 12 minutes and 20 seconds. Gunther victorious.
To me, this was a top 3 Miz match at least, just because it was one of the few that actually had me invested in a Miz match.
The finish was sweet too.
Yes, absolutely.
I guess one of my points on this next one is that they could have given him more time. This pay-per-view was only about 2 hours and 45 minutes. You know, one of their big 4 pay-per-views. And Escobar and Dragon Lee had 7 minutes and 40 seconds. So this is the match that, you know, they changed. They wrote off Carlito on SmackDown on Friday night. Dragon Lee steps in. They're having a pretty good match, but I mean, given the length of it, it never really got to that high gear. I thought the match was pretty good overall. Jesse, what'd you make of this one?
I had actually really high hopes for this. I was hoping they would, like you just alluded to, maybe 5 more minutes, because I have watched a decent amount of Dragon Lee over the last 5 years, and he had an incredible triple threat at the ROH New Japan show in New York. I mean, it was just a sprint for 10 minutes. He had an absolute classic with Will Ospreay right after the Super Juniors in 2019. And he's been doing a wonderful job on TV, giving the fans a different look. They're actually excited to watch him. And to see these 2 Hispanic performers go at it, I know what both are capable of. They put on a pretty solid sprint-ish type match that should have been given a little more time. I guess in the grand scheme of things, the heel, yes, should definitely go over here so you can continue things. But yeah, give those guys just a little more time.
Yeah. If you guys haven't been watching WWE television, they have very much been trying to get Dragon Lee over. You know, they've been leaning into Rey Mysterio, calling him the lucha star of the future and the past. And, you know, you can tell, like, we're going to see this match again for sure. And I hope next time they give him some more time, because there was no reason on the show, given the runtime. If they want to get this in, I think we've heard before, they want all their pay-per-views to be 3 hours. They still had time to do that. So they could have given him 5 more minutes. My hopes were pretty high too. It didn't totally live up to him, but it was a good enough match. They were just kind of getting there. Justin, did you see this one?
Nope. I let my kids stay up late to watch the Gunther match, and so I was putting him to bed during this and the majority of the next one.
Yeah.
The markings of a good parent.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, basically the ending of the match was Lee hit a sit-out powerbomb, near fall. And then we got a destroyer and the Phantom Driver for Escobar right after that, and Escobar won. Then they go into Rhea Ripley defending the women's world title against Zoe Stark. And I mean, if it wasn't Gunther, this was the biggest lock on the show. I think, you know, looking at Zoe Stark, she is a rising name that they're trying to put more emphasis on, but there was just no way you could believe that she could possibly win this. I mean, with Rhea Ripley and the momentum that she has right now. And, you know, that's what happened. Rhea Ripley went over and they got more minutes than Escobar and Dragon Lee, 9 minutes and 15 seconds. Jesse, did you like this one?
I was kind of checked out here, if I'm being honest, because again, I'll go back to kayfabe one more time. Is that Zoe Starks has lost her last singles matches on TV, and you had her win a battle royal. So I ultimately knew what was coming. I think she has a great future, but you did a horrible job of presenting her as a title contender on a major 5 PLE that you have. So this is just us being critics. So again, if you don't really follow this closely, you're like, hey, maybe she does have a chance. So no, I mean, outcome was zero doubt there.
Yeah, like Stark was trying to sell that she was as physical in nature as Ripley throughout the match and that she could match her one-on-one there. In the end, she countered the Z360, hit the Riptide, got the win. I mean, we'll see these two wrestle again in the future. Stark is just not quite there yet. I saw the finish, but I was setting up my office for the BR live stream in the main event, so I was kind of in and out on this match. Justin, any thoughts on this one?
No.
Yeah. Probably get the kids to bed at this point, getting ready for War Games. All right, so that brings us to the men's War Games match, which was the main event. And we kind of talked about pieces of this already. And I mean, I would just reiterate what I said earlier about the social media clips. You know, this was kind of in this match, that's everything was laid out in that way. There were portions in the match where, especially when you got to the match beyond where you can get the win now, where you're like watching it, why are you not going for the cover? Why, you just hit your signature move. Why are you not covering? I love how Justin has the ruffles out.
Exactly. I'm sitting here trying to contain my laughter right now.
I'm flipping back and forth between tabs, and I come back, and Justin's very stoically holding this bag up to the camera. I gotta tell a story about that. I almost forgot. I'm glad you got him. So the Ruffles ads all over during the women's War Games match. They had them on the ribbon boards everywhere. Just over the top sponsorship. Yeah.
Insane.
We didn't have it during the men's match. But I will tell you that I was watching this with my 2 oldest daughters. And after that women's match, they both ran upstairs. And I'm like, where are they going? And we have, one of those big boxes that you can buy at Sam's Club or wherever, where you get all the small chips bags for lunches, right? They both came down with Ruffles bags of chips. Swear to God, and ate them during the next match. So I thought, advertising, man, it works. There it is. They had to go get their Ruffles potato chips, and we actually had some.
Credit for the R-Truth cameo, though, in between those two matches. That was by far the best part of that Ruffles gimmick.
And that was funny when Hunter said at the media scrum, he's like, "Oh, y'all want to talk about the big return tonight?" And then he brought up R-Truth, which, yeah, always good to see him. Oh. Someone was talking about, I think it was in the Facebook group last night, is R-Truth going to be a Hall of Fame? He absolutely will be in the Hall of Fame someday. He's been around forever. He's held titles. He will definitely be in the WWE Hall of Fame. There's no question about it.
Hate to break it to everybody, but basically 99% of the people you see on screen will be in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Eventually, they'll run out. Yeah, they'll run out of people to put in. You're going to get to WrestleMania 60, and they're going to be really scraping at the bottom of the barrel here. So, I guess anything. Okay, one big point about this. I thought it was very odd how they built up the is Orton going to be here or not thing, since all we heard before the event was that they were going to announce Orton in advance so that people didn't buy their tickets expecting to see CM Punk as the mystery partner. And then we get to the show, and then they leaned into that, and it was very bizarre to me. Like, why would he not be there on time? And so all through the match, Orton's not there in the cage waiting to come in, the smaller cage waiting to come into the bigger cage. And then when it's time for him to come out, he's not there. And instead, Ripley comes out with Money in the Bank. And you think there's going to be a cash in on Rollins during this match for the world title. And then Orton came out. I thought that was a little strange. You guys, I was just kind of surprised how they built that up, given everything we heard before the event.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a misstep along the same lines as, teasing a Adam Cole versus Jay White match through the course of a pay-per-view. It's like, we know what's going to happen. You don't have to treat us like idiots. We know MJF is going to show up. Well, at least some of us did. And we know Randy Orton is going to show up. And real quick, I actually kind of liked the briefcase tease. That was truly unique when it comes to a cash-in.
Agreed.
It was secretly one of the things I was kind of hoping, like an alternative ending type. Would be Damian maybe cashing in at the end. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Randy Orton, I mean, he's definitely been working out above and beyond me at this point right now. That man is in phenomenal shape.
He looked like he had done nothing but lift for 18 months.
It was funny when he came out. I was like, holy shit, he is yoked to the point where he must have gotten some Brock Lesnar, money and schedule, which I think they should. That's how I think they should utilize him anyways, as more of an attraction at this point. But holy smokes, he looks fantastic.
On that deer antler spray.
Okay, another point I wanted to make before I forget is that, and we all experienced this when we were in Chicago for All Out and Collision before that, is that, when Tony fired Punk, there were boos, and then Tony got Punk the fans kind of on his side. And we saw throughout All Out and that Collision that night that anytime Punk chants started, the crowd booed them down. And we saw this happen throughout Survivor Series. There were Punk chants in the women's match that I noted. They got shut down pretty quickly. There were Punk chants in the main event, lasted a little longer. Eventually, they got booed down. But in the end, every single person in that building who booed down the CM Punk chants lost their shit when that guy walked out. So in the end, everyone's just a mark. I mean, they all wanted to see him. Come on.
I feel bad for the real Chicago Phil Lindsay, who was escorted back to the wrestling media tent for the press conference and missed the whole thing live. Sorry, Phil.
I saw him on the media scrum. Yeah, I saw him on camera a little bit. So they were not out there for the Punk return. Wow, that sucks. That really sucks. Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, I was going to shout out all of our comments here in the YouTube section. This is awesome. Thank you, guys.
What do you guys think of Niall's comment here? He said, an issue with War Games is that there's no stakes until everyone is entered. You are basically just waiting 20 minutes before the match can finish.
That's fine. As long as the match beyond doesn't take another 20 minutes. You need to wrap everything up within 10 minutes after that. So everything that came before it does not lose meaning.
Agree. And they actually did last night. I think it was only 3 or 4 minutes from the time Orton entered until the end. But then it did that's where it got very contrived with all doing the Hangman's DDT, everyone hitting their finishes and nobody going for the cover.
So, my mutant power is not here in the commentary. And yet I felt like I heard Michael Cole screaming in my ears with the vintage War Games with the draping DDT.
Oh,
Dear
yeah.
God, anybody who was in an actual War Games who is dead are rolling in their graves hearing that.
Vintage War Games.
My God.
That was bad. I remember that now too. Yeah, we were just, Jeremy and I on the live stream on BR, we're just going back and forth. Like, everyone's hitting their finish. Why are you not covering? Why would you not cover? This is supposed to be a fight. You hit your finish, and it was just watch the other guy do your finish. Watch the other guy do your finish. And again, it's all about clips. It's literally how the matches are laid out. The RKO off the top to McDonough was really cool.
Yes.
But like, again, that is the biggest move of the match. Why not cover? Well, we had to get Crossroads so Cody could cover and then get Cody's theme instead, I guess. But like, play Randy's theme. He was the big return. That was odd. I thought that was very odd. It popped the crowd, all those finishes and stuff, but it's just, that's not my cup of tea with pro wrestling, the way they did that.
Cody Rhodes, you're a huge politician. How in the world could you not have had the stroke to get a cage over the top and for you to juice in this match?
Right?
Who was that had the tweet about that? I think it was Joey Janela. Joey Janela had the comments about, like, if Cody doesn't blade from coast to coast tonight, this business is dead or something like that. Yeah, no shit, man.
Oh, that was, great callback. That was my favorite tweet of the night.
Yeah, that was funny. So, and then, the match ends, baby faces go over, and then we get the Punk return, and that was Survivor Series. So, I mean, in the end, it's basically a show built on that one major moment at the end. I do not think I will remember anything else about this show long term. Maybe the RKO off the top. That's it. You guys?
I wish they would have on every Survivor Series pay-per-view at least one traditional Survivor Series match. I do like how Survivor Series has kind of become the place for big debuts, being that, you can't get a lot from the gimmick matches with the way they've set it up. So Punk joining the long list of people who have come before him is kind of a fun little Thanksgiving tradition.
teaser for our Patreon audience, as well as those who should or can get a free 7-day trial of our Patreon show. When we touch on Survivor Series 1995, there are two things that I wish would be applied to 2023's version of the Survivor Series. But you're going to have to tune into Patreon to check that out.
And we are recording that this week, you guys. If you want to hear us break down Survivor Series 95, TRN Classics, the November edition, as voted on by our patrons, sign up. Link in the broadcast description here. As Jesse said, you can get a 7-day free trial, over 120 bonus shows. I think this month we dropped 4 or 5 bonus audio shows. If you like us on the main feed, you're not getting half the content if you're not a patron. Almost everyone who joins Patreon stays members long-term. A lot of our patrons, which are around 40 of them right now, I believe, they've been on there for years, and we greatly appreciate their support and pumping out this bonus content for them. Yeah, TRN Unplugged has been great. Jesse did a Survivor Series preview on there before this show. That was the only way to hear that, was on our Patreon page. And then, yeah, Classics, we always go over 2 hours on these, and I'm looking forward to Survivor Series 95. A lot.
Shout out Matt B in the comments for his contribution.
CM Punk. That's it. Yes, indeed.
This is
CM
why
Punk
we
was
love
on the
Justin
show.
Joint so much.
So, yeah, I don't think I have a lot else to say on this show. I think I hit all the big points that I wanted to. You guys?
I'm good, man.
I think I hit everything I wanted to as well.
So as we're planning right now, we are only planning to do Classics this week because it requires a lot of our time. If something major happens on Raw, maybe we'll do a brief episode, or maybe it'll be an extra for Patreon. I don't know. We'll see how the week plays out. But for sure, there's a Classics dropping for Patreon later this week. Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, WWE is a very hot promotion right now. They have not been this hot in a long time. We can nitpick things about it we don't like, but they're also, as Jesse and I have really said for the last couple of months on this pod, there's stuff to like, even for the hardcore longtime fans, the old men such as us. Jesse, we've said it a lot. Like, I have really enjoyed watching WWE in recent months. It is a good product. It is way better than it was a couple of years ago. Punk being in the mix makes it immensely even more interesting. It's going to get Justin to tune in now. So in the end, I mean, pro wrestling's great. We get these moments that you didn't think would happen. You're not human if you didn't get excited seeing Punk walk out last night. It was a great moment. And that's why we love this stuff. And look, when wrestling is hot, it's a lot more fun to do these podcasts. We've said that for years. It's a lot better for our downloads when people are interested in pro wrestling as well. So I'm happy about that. And it should be a fun time. Should be a good WrestleMania season.
I was amped to get on this show just for the Phil Brooks sighting as well. And Living Color, thank you so much for re-releasing a remastered version of Cult of Personality on Friday. I'm sure that was probably a subtle hint to what was going to happen last night.
Mm-hmm. Aaron Graham in the chat. I know one thing for sure. This show was A+, referring to our pod. Great show. Go Vikes.
I was horrified because I thought he was talking about Survivor Series at first. I had to reread it. Oh, he's talking about us. Okay. Whew.
Jesse, it is the Top Rope Nation Bowl Monday night. Bears Vikings in Minnesota. Would not be stunned to see the Bears somehow pull out. They have been playing a lot better of late. They should have beat the Lions a week ago. Justin has a Michigan Wolverines.
Go blue. Go blue. I hope they beat my home state Hawkeyes because the Hawkeyes have an offense that make the Bears look like the greatest show on turf.
That's true.
The over-under of that game, by the way, real quick, is to the point where they are predicting that Iowa is not going to score a touchdown.
That's amazing.
Well, you know what? You might be seeing the next head coach of the Chicago Bears in that game. A lot of rumors out there about Jim Harbaugh. Top Rope Nation unplugged mug Jesse has. I've got the red, white, and blue Top Rope Nation mug here, repping the brand. You know what? Justin Fields has looked pretty good. We'll see. It should be a fun game.
Yeah.
Should be a fun game.
I just don't think they have an interest in winning many more games this year, Ryan.
They shouldn't. That's another podcast.
The fact that they have Carolina's pick gives them a little more leeway. But yeah, you want to be sure this coaching staff gets fired long term.
I think
I
the
don't-
Vikings will win by 7.
I
It'll
don't
be
think the
within
Vikings
one
have an
score.
interest in winning games though either. I think if the Vikings would have tanked and they could get a top quarterback, they're better long term.
Oh, I
If you
agree.
added like Caleb Williams or Drake May with Justin Jefferson and the rest of that offense, you're looking at a Super Bowl contender in a couple of years. And I mean, does winning games this year do much for them? I don't know. I don't know about that either. So
It
a lot of
doesn't.
things at play here. This is for Top Rope Nation Sports Extra. We'll save this. All right, Top Rope Nation Bowl Monday night. Top Rope Nation Classics Tuesday night. Gonna be a fun time, you guys. Appreciate you jumping on. We had a great chat today. Thank you for everyone who tuned in live and who are watching on demand after the fact. I'm going to get this pod mixed immediately, get that up on the feed, and we will talk to you all again real soon. I hope you all have a good week and hope you enjoyed the return of CM Punk. Take care.
Go Blue.
The mat is sacred.